Hello, it is about 9:30 on a Thursday morning and we've got 30-degree weather Celsius, so it's going to be an awful day. It's forecast to be 35, so hopefully we'll get some work done this morning because I think once the sun gets up it's just going to be rubbish. I've almost finished my flush trim plane. I made one last year. This is a little bit longer, a little bit better for my hands. Construction's exactly the same, but I didn't do a very good video of it last time because it was a project while I was building something else. I'd broken ribs at that stage, seems to be a common theme for me. I was doing a whole bunch of drawer fronts and drawers, and I did a video on how to make different types of drawers. And I was doing some edge banding on the fronts. I didn't have a way to trim it, so I made the flush trim plane, but it was a very quick, everything sped up video with no explanation. So this should be a nicer video. This is definitely my most used plane. Use it for glue squeeze out, edge banding, flush trimming, dowels, that sort of stuff. And really, you can knock it over in a day if you're not recording, and uses just a very inexpensive block plane blade. So really good DIY plane without having to go to a lot of effort, and you get a lot of use out of it. Speaking of the weather and stuff, I've been experimenting with XPS foam for insulation. So there's two types of foam, styrene. There is XPS and EPS. XPS, extruded polyurethane, versus expanded polystyrene, not urethane. This is a multi-use project panel insulation board from Bunnings. Relatively inexpensive. To do the whole garage door, it would be about $200. So I'm sort of looking at how much of a difference this will make versus some of the other options, and the other option being Thermador. Walking past here in the middle of the day, you can feel quite a big difference just on your head between the two panels, which is good. It means that insulation will do something. It's not the greatest color though, it is a little yellow, and that's where Thermador's product, while expensive, is probably what I'm going to go for. Theirs has a vinyl cover on one side and foil on the other. The vinyl is like a stippled white, almost a melamine type texture to it, which will be really good for videography. It'll reflect the light in, particularly at the bandsaw, which gets quite dark because of the direction of the lights. So I'm reluctant to spend the money, but I think I'm going to have to, because it gets ridiculously hot in here, and there's no point putting in any sort of cooling if I'm losing it all through the door. And vice versa for winter, it'll also help keep the heat in. So the cheaper route is the XPS foam. You can't really bond anything to it easily. You can't use any sort of glues that are solvent-based glue, so you couldn't just glue on vinyl with contact cement because it'll just burn right through it. So you'd need to use tape, which that's fine, but once you add the cost of the vinyl, the foam, the tape, all those bits and pieces, and then the time, I'm probably looking at a similar sort of number to the Thermador stuff, which was about $600 for the panels, $100 for delivery, and then they were wanting to sell a seal that goes all the way around, which is like $250. So I won't get the seal. I know that would make some difference, but I'm more interested in just the foam and maybe a DIY solution for the seal. Unfortunately, I can't afford that until next payday, which will be around Christmas time, which means they'll be shut down. So in January, I should be ordering and installing that. Then I need to get someone out to rebalance the door because it adds about 7 kilos to the weight of the door. So the springs need to be retensioned so you don't burn out the motor. I don't want to talk for too long because I've got stuff to do before it gets too hot. So this is the last thing I'll talk about today. Got a whole bunch of these blackwood paneling. Blackwood is a lovely timber. Problem is these aren't 100% straight, and they're only about 12 mil, probably ½ inch to be honest. So I don't really know what to do with them. One thing I've been thinking about doing is making a single person, maybe 1.5 seat Nelson bench. So I'd glue 2 pieces together and then joint it down to probably 3/4 of an inch, 19 mil, 20 mil. Because if I was to joint this now, I'd probably only end up with 8 mil or so, trying to get it all flat, and that's not going to be a particularly good bench. The slats would be too thin. So I've had this stuff for about 3 years. Father-in-law picked up somewhere for free, and I've sort of come to the conclusion that stuff isn't valuable just on the shelves. If these sit on the shelves for another 3 years, they're still essentially worthless. If they get turned into a project, that has a lot more worth. So if you've got ideas for thin, not necessarily all that straight stock, let me know. I don't really want to cut it up for boxes because it's not wide enough that you're going to get a lot of weird grain going on, contrasting grain. So yeah, try to think of something to turn it into, because that would be nice. Anyway, that's all for now. I'm going to get stuck into finishing off the shaping of this before I melt. Thanks for watching.